In the heart of modern Mexico City, beneath bustling streets and concrete buildings, archaeologists made a discovery that would send shockwaves through the scientific community and validate one of the most terrifying accounts from the Spanish conquest of the Americas. They found a tower built entirely of human skulls, exactly as described by conquistadors 5 centuries ago, who claimed it was so massive and horrifying that it haunted their dreams for years afterward. The year was 2015, when Raul Barrera Rodriguez received a routine call to investigate a colonial building scheduled for renovation near Mexico City's famous Templo Mayor. As his team from Mexico's National Institute of Anthropology and History began their excavation, they initially found the expected colonial debris and porcelain fragments. But then, buried beneath basalt floor slabs from the Aztec period, hundreds of skull fragments began to emerge from the earth. In more than 2 decades of archaeological work in downtown Mexico City, Barrera Rodriguez had never encountered anything like what lay before him. What they had discovered was the legendary Huei Tzompantli, the great skull rack of Tenochtitlan, the very structure that Spanish conquistador Andrés de Tapia had described with such vivid horror in 1521. De Tapia, who had been tasked with counting the skulls, claimed the structure contained over 136,000 human heads, though modern scholars believe this number was likely exaggerated by the sheer, overwhelming nature of what he witnessed. Even conservative estimates by historian Bernard Ortiz de Montellano suggest the original structure may have displayed around 60,000 skulls simultaneously. The archaeological evidence reveals a construction that defied imagination. The main Tzompantli was a massive rectangular wooden scaffold measuring 35 meters long and 14 meters wide, slightly larger than a basketball court, and rising 4 to 5 meters high. Thousands of human skulls with precisely drilled holes were threaded like beads onto horizontal wooden poles that stretched between massive timber uprights, creating what Spanish soldier Bernal Díaz del Castillo described as an impressive constellation of human remains. But the skull rack itself was only part of the horror that greeted European eyes. Flanking this central display were circular towers built entirely of human skulls, mortared together with lime, sand, and clay. Architectural marvels that used human remains as their primary construction material. The archaeological team has uncovered evidence of at least 2 construction phases of these towers, with the oldest measuring 3.6 meters in diameter, and the later expansion reaching 4.7 meters across, and at least 1.7 meters tall. The skulls on the exterior facade faced outward with their teeth visible, exactly as de Tapia had described, while those in the center all faced inward toward the hollow core. By December 2020, archaeologists had documented 603 skulls from the tower structure alone, with the most recent discovery adding 119 additional specimens to the count. But perhaps most shocking to researchers was the demographic composition of the victims. Initial expectations suggested the skulls would belong primarily to male warriors captured in battle, fitting the traditional narrative of Aztec warfare and the famous flower wars designed to capture sacrificial victims. Instead, the forensic analysis revealed skulls from men, women, and children, including at least 3 individuals who were clearly minors based on their smaller size and emerging teeth. Physical anthropologist Rodrigo Bolaños Martinez, who led the analysis of the recently discovered remains, expressed the scientific community's surprise. "We were expecting just men, obviously young men, as warriors would be. And the thing about the women and children is that you'd think they wouldn't be going to war." This discovery fundamentally challenges previous assumptions about Aztec sacrificial practices and raises profound questions about who was selected for these rituals and why. The preservation of the skulls provides extraordinary insights into ancient Aztec mortuary practices. Many specimens show evidence of having been displayed on the wooden rack for extended periods. with some skulls fracturing due to prolonged exposure to the elements, while others were removed quickly enough that articulated vertebrae and jawbones remained intact. The Tzompantli appears to have been a dynamic structure where skulls were regularly displayed and then removed, suggesting a complex ritualistic cycle that archaeologists are still working to understand. Modern scientific techniques are revolutionizing our understanding of these ancient remains. For the first time, researchers are employing stable isotope analysis and ancient DNA testing to determine not just the demographics of the victims, but their geographic origins, diets, and genetic histories. Anthropologist Jorge Gomez Valdez and his team at the University of Georgia are analyzing isotopes in the teeth of 83 individuals, which can reveal where these people were born and raised. Simultaneously, samples are being processed at the Max Planck Institute in Germany for comprehensive DNA analysis that will help determine the sex of incomplete remains and potentially reveal family relationships among the victims. The religious and cultural context of these structures centers on their dedication to Huitzilopochtli, the Aztec god of war, human sacrifice, and the sun. The Huei Tzompantli stood within the sacred precinct of Tenochtitlan, serving multiple purposes in Aztec cosmology and politics. To the Aztecs, human sacrifice was not mere brutality, but a cosmic necessity. They believed that human blood and hearts were required to nourish the gods and maintain the balance of the universe. Each skull represented what they considered a sacred offering, transformed from mortal remains into gifts for the deities, or even personifications of the gods themselves. The psychological impact on Spanish conquistadors cannot be overstated. When Hernán Cortés and his men first entered Tenochtitlan in November 1519, the sight of the Tzompantli structures filled them with such terror that multiple chroniclers documented their horror in vivid detail. Bernal Díaz del Castillo, who served as a soldier in the Conquest, wrote extensively about these monuments in his later memoir, The True History of the Conquest of New Spain, describing them as among the most horrifying sights he had witnessed in the Americas. These accounts, written decades after the events, remained remarkably consistent and have now been validated by archaeological evidence. The scale of human sacrifice in Tenochtitlan likely reached its peak during the reign of the Aztec emperors between 1486 and 1502, the period when archaeologists believe the discovered phases of the Huei Tzompantli were constructed. Carbon dating and stratigraphic analysis of the remains support this timeline, coinciding with the height of Aztec imperial power and territorial expansion. The practice had been ongoing since the founding of Tenochtitlan in 1325, but the monumental scale of the structures suggests an intensification of sacrificial activities during the late imperial period. Bioarchaeologist Vera Tiesler from the Autonomous University of Yucatan provides crucial comparative context, noting that while other Mesoamerican cultures also practiced human sacrifice and built Tzompantli structures, the Mexica certainly brought this to an extreme. Her work at the Mayan city of Chichen Itza, founded 700 years before Tenochtitlan, revealed only 6 skulls with holes that suggested Tzompantli display, and these showed less standardized preparation than the Tenochtitlan specimens. This evidence suggests that the Aztecs developed and perfected these practices to an unprecedented degree. The construction techniques reveal sophisticated engineering and planning. The wooden framework required massive timber uprights woven together with horizontal crossbeams to support the weight of thousands of skulls. The skulls were carefully prepared through a standardized process involving precise drilling of holes for threading onto poles, suggesting organized workshops and specialized craftspeople dedicated to this grisly task. The mortar used in the circular towers contained carefully mixed lime, sand, and clay that has preserved the structures for over 500 years. Recent discoveries continue to expand our understanding of the site's scope. In March 2020, Archaeologists uncovered an additional section of the tower, containing 119 skulls, bringing the total documented remains to over 600 specimens. However, researchers believe they have only excavated a fraction of the original structure. Alejandra Frausto Guerrero, Mexico City's culture secretary, described the Huei Tzompantli as, without a doubt, one of the most impressive archaeological finds of recent years in our country, and an important testament to the power and greatness achieved by Mexico Tenochtitlan. The mystery deepens when we consider the broader context of Aztec society. While the Spanish accounts emphasize the horror and brutality of these practices, modern anthropological research suggests the reality was far more complex. Some scholars argue that the term human sacrifice itself may be a colonial misnomer that misrepresents the sophisticated religious and social functions these rituals served in Aztec cosmology. The presence of women and children among the victims suggests these ceremonies may have encompassed a broader range of religious purposes than simple warrior sacrifice. The fate of these magnificent and terrible structures was sealed with the Spanish conquest. After capturing Tenochtitlan in 1521, the Conquistadors systematically destroyed the Tzompantli and other monuments they considered pagan abominations. Many skulls were deliberately crushed or scattered, which explains why archaeologists find thousands of fragments rather than complete specimens. The Spanish then built their own colonial structures directly on top of the raised Aztec monuments, inadvertently preserving portions of the skull towers beneath layers of European architecture. Today, over 11,000 skull fragments have been catalogued from the Huei Tzompantli site, each representing an individual human life that ended in ritual sacrifice over 500 years ago. The meticulous documentation and preservation work by INA archaeologists and international partners ensures that these remains, and the stories they tell, will be preserved for future generations of researchers. Advanced scientific techniques continue to reveal new insights about the lives, origins, and identities of these ancient people, who became part of one of history's most extraordinary and disturbing monuments. The Huei Tzompantli stands as tangible proof that some of the most incredible accounts from the Spanish conquest were not exaggerations or colonial propaganda, but accurate descriptions of a civilization that operated according to radically different cosmological principles than our own. As we continue to uncover the buried secrets of Tenochtitlan, we are forced to confront the complex reality of a society that created breathtaking art and architecture, developed sophisticated agricultural and engineering systems, and simultaneously constructed monuments from the skulls of thousands of human beings. The skull towers of the Aztecs remain one of archaeology's most haunting reminders that human civilization has followed paths that challenge our modern understanding of both the sacred and the profane. What drove the Aztecs to construct these monuments on such an unprecedented scale? And what can the continuing scientific analysis of these remains tell us about the individuals who became part of this ancient cosmic drama?